Napolitano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding a hearing on the critical need to increase investment in transportation infrastructure. And I am proud to join you and Ranking Member Norton, 235 of our bipartisan colleagues, in sending a letter to Ways and Means Committee urging them to fix the Highway Trust Fund revenue problem in order to provide sustained and sufficient funding for our transportation. Thank you to all the witnesses. Your testimony is highlighting the need for robust funding, both maintaining our existing infrastructure and new projects to address congestion, safety, and efficiency. I particularly want to thank Mr. Roberts from California. I often see the crews along the highways that I go almost on a daily basis when I'm home, and I appreciate the dangerous work you do. And colleagues are in the transportation and the building trades. Your testimony highlights the American Society of Engineers report card that our nation's roads have a D and our nation's transit system a D minus. American Society of Civil Engineers note that there is an $836 billion backlog of highway and bridge capital needs, with an additional $123 billion backlog for bridge repair, the $90 billion backlog on transit maintenance. I'm proud that the California legislature worked to address the transportation funding gap by passing SB 1, the $5.2 billion per year transportation spending package for 10 years. It's passed on a bipartisan basis. 2/3 of our legislators voted for, signed by Governor in April, but now some of our colleagues are challenging in court. Surprisingly, they're pursuing a ballot measure to repeal this important transportation funding. I ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chair, to insert into the record letters from California Fix Our Roads Coalition and the Transportation Construction Coalition opposing repeal of SB 1.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Roberts, can you discuss the infrastructure challenges facing California, and do you believe SB 1 is needed to address those challenges? How many jobs does SB 1 create in California, and the impact would be in repealing SB 1 on our state's economy?
Yes, ma'am. I would be happy to, because I think that SB 1 was probably one of the biggest legislative actions that I've seen in many, many years in the state of California.
Finally.
The backlog of work in California, as I mentioned before, is in excess of $100 billion itself in the state of California. It has been continually underfunded, and actually in the last several years it has been reduced, which is a tragedy. And I think that what's happening in the state of California is a microcosm of what's happening across the country. And so I want to go on record and make clear that the legislature stood up and did what we are hoping our federal government will do as well. And they used, as you suggest, a bipartisan approach to it. Brought in discussions for several years. The governor, the leader of the state of California, put together the program at the end. They used a host of fees, and I think this is the important part. They did not focus just on gas tax. It has gas taxes, it has diesel tax, it has registration fees for electrical vehicles, for hybrid vehicles. So it used a host of opportunities, which we've been talking about all day here this morning, relative to making sure that we diversify the opportunity to create the funding mechanism. I think it would have been just absolutely devastating, or will be, if any kind of a repeal effort is successful, because today in California, we're in gridlock. And there was a question asked earlier about this does not address congestion. Well, it does address congestion. It doesn't address large expansion, but part of the congestion problem that we have across the country is the fact that we haven't properly maintained the systems that we have today.
For years.
Which is a significant issue in itself, and this is why I said previously that if you don't maintain what you had to begin with, you should not be putting more in place, because you're not going to maintain that properly either. I am excited also with Ms. Lawrence's comment that something of this significance, long-term, 10 years, $52 billion, will create an opportunity for people to move into the business of being in that industry and create careers so they can put money and food on the table for their families. And not just a short-term stimulus, but a long-term $52 billion program in the state of California that will change the construction industry for decades to come. So I want to congratulate the legislature and the governor for what I think is one of the biggest and strongest acts they've done in years.
Thank you very much. That is very true, and we are looking forward to more funding into an expansion of our freeways, because some of them are, well, more than 50 years old, and they're falling apart, not able to handle the type of transportation that is currently needed to get to work, get to deliver, and do all the other things. I find it sad that it took me, I was working for Ford Motor at the time, it took me 17 minutes from my house to my job back 20 years ago. Now it takes me an hour and a half. So it is important that we address the congestion, but also keep in mind that we need to address the backlog, the operation and maintenance, so that we have enough funding in reserve to be able to take care of that also. Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Woodall.